Hey, do you think you're a better developer than me? The answer may surprise you. Now, I'm just going to be very honest with you right up front. I don't think that I'm the greatest developer to ever walk the earth. In fact, I'm sure there are many, many, many developers who are much better developers than I am. In fact, most of the people that I work with, I would say, are much better developers than me, even though I actually am a lead developer. So, why am I asking this question if I already know that there's lots of developers that are better than me? Well, there's been a lot of turmoil over the last few years, especially for junior developers. And I know a lot of times I talk about some negative things here on this channel, and I really just wanted to give a positive video and an encouraging video, especially for you junior developers. And when I say that there are better developers out there than me, I think that includes some junior developers too. Now you might be thinking, how in the world is a junior developer going to be better than you? Well, let's talk about that. Hey, junior devs, Dev Mentor Dave here, helping you bridge the gap from learning to code to launching a successful career. And part of that successful career is being better than other people sometimes. So give me a comment below and just rate yourself from 1 to 100 of how good of a dev you think you are. Now, I know it's really easy for you guys to feel discouraged right now when you're working and you're trying really hard to learn all these new things and lots of new concepts, especially if you've never done any sort of development before. This is all brand new to you. It can be really discouraging when you just take longer and longer than you think it should to get a job, or even just to learn the things that you're trying to learn. Well, I wanted to just take a few minutes today and tell you a little bit about my journey. And if you don't care about that, then you can just stop watching the video. No, you can skip over this part over to where I give you all the kudos for all the great things that you guys are doing. But I want to compare that with my journey. So my journey as a developer started in 1999 when I was a senior in high school, and I took a half a semester computer course that taught me basic HTML. And I fell in love with HTML at the time. We didn't even have CSS. We just had HTML was all that we learned. And so I learned HTML, and for quite a few years, I just kind of played with HTML on the side. In fact, that's not what I went to school for. Many of you know that one of my jobs is that I'm a pastor. I actually went to school for theology. And so that had nothing to do with computer science or building websites or building web applications or most of the things that I do today, other than be a pastor. So there was a long period of time where all I really knew was some very basic HTML that I learned my last semester of high school. Well, I was still very interested in web design and web development. And as the years went by, I heard about this stuff called CSS. I heard about how you could style with these extra files. You didn't have to put all your styles in the style tag, and all these cool new things were available to me with CSS. And I started learning that probably around 2005. And that's when I really started to kind of be a little bit more interested in development as an actual job. Now, I didn't get my job right then, but I started taking it a little bit more seriously back in about 2005. It was also about that same time when I was introduced to JavaScript, and now I could interact with the web page. I could make it do different things. And about that time was also jQuery, even though I don't really use that or like it anymore. But jQuery was really cool and back then. And so I was learning jQuery, and I was learning JavaScript, and I was learning how to do these cool things with my web page. But then in 2007, I realized that something was missing. See, I could build a website and somebody could come to it and they could see all the static information that I had on there, but I wanted to be able to collect information. I wanted to be able to store information. I had no idea how to do that. So in about 2007, that's when I started learning about PHP and MySQL and started learning how databases work and started playing around with backend server-side coding and that interaction between the front end and the back end and how all that worked. And that took a while for me to understand. And then in 2009, I was introduced to the wonderful world of WordPress. And it was then that I learned the WordPress framework, and I was able to put my PHP and MySQL and HTML and CSS and JavaScript all together and start building really cool dynamic websites with WordPress. Then in 2011, I got my big break. I got the opportunity to work for my brother as a freelancer, building an application for one of his clients. And I found what to this day is one of the coolest things that I have ever used. And that was my first real PHP framework. Yes, WordPress is a framework, but I didn't really understand it as a framework back then. But I understood what CodeIgniter was, and that was a framework. And I learned CodeIgniter version 2, I think, back in 2011. And I used that for 3 years on the job, building my first application for a client, for an outside client. Now, I had built a couple of small applications for the company that I was working for at the time and that I left to go do this full time. But that was really when things started to begin to solidify into a job. So that was basically 10 years later, 12 years later, 1999 to 2011. So from the time I first wrote my first line of HTML to the time that I really took on a full-time job was 11 years. But the learning doesn't really stop there. I learned about Git in 2014. Yeah, I went for 3 years building a web application without knowing that there was such a thing as version control. In 2015, I learned the Laravel 4 framework, and we're on Laravel 10 now, so that tells you how old I am. And then in 2016, my mind was blown when I learned about Amazon Web Services and all the really, really cool things that you could do with Amazon Web Services and all the managed services that they were building at the time. And so I began digging into that and learning different aspects about AWS. And then I lost my job. No, that's not that exciting, but losing my job helped me get the opportunity to learn 2 JavaScript frameworks in the course of 18 months. I learned Angular and I learned Vue. React is still terrible. Please stop using React. And then in 2018, I learned Node and I learned MongoDB. And in 2019, I learned Docker and a little bit of Terraform and Kubernetes, but not a whole lot. And then in 2019, I started learning Go, which I never really did a whole lot with, but I kind of understand the concepts. And then I took this job in 2022 and had to relearn Laravel now that we were on Laravel 9 and then now 10 when I started taking this job. So the last 11 years of my development journey, I've doubled, maybe even tripled the number of languages and frameworks and things that I actually know. But it all started way back in 1999 with one thing, HTML. Okay, so why did I go through all of that information? Well, I think a lot of times, junior developers especially, when you guys watch these videos and you see people like me who've been doing development for a long time, and you see the things that we know and the things that we've experienced and the things that we talk about, it can be easy for you to feel discouraged and feel like you're never going to get there. And I just wanted to show you that I didn't learn all this stuff overnight. It's taken me 22 or 26 years now. 7, I don't know. I can't even do the math. It's taken me over 20 years to get to where I am today. But I want to compare that with you. All right. So think about this. Think about this with me. You started off more than likely learning from a boot camp or maybe a tutorial series on YouTube or Udemy or something like that. And you probably jumped straight into learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then probably a JavaScript framework like React, and then probably a backend language like Node, and then probably something like MongoDB and GitHub and VS Code or whatever other IDE that you use. I mean, that's 8 different things that you learned probably in about 16 to 32 to 52 weeks. I mean, well, let's say it took you a year. A year. Think about that. It took me 11 years to get to the place where I felt comfortable stepping into a role as a full-time developer. And you have learned everything that I knew at that point in about 6 to 12 months. Now, are you perfectly good at it? No, of course not. It just takes time. It takes effort. It takes work to get better and better and better. But you have learned in a matter of months what took me years to learn years ago. So I know that you're probably discouraged and you're frustrated because things aren't working out. Things aren't moving as quickly as you hoped that they would move, or that somebody even told you that they would move. But I want you to understand what you have actually accomplished. You've done what I did in 11 years in the matter of months. So, are you a better dev than me? Maybe. Hey, I hope you found this video encouraging as you go on your junior dev journey. And if so, if you would click the like button, I'd greatly appreciate it. It just helps YouTube know that people find this interesting. And if you're not subscribed, if you'd like to, so hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be notified the next time I upload a video. And I'll see you on the next one.